Good evening and welcome to Portraits at Kettering, the pre-concert lecture. First time I've done one of these, so bear with me, but I thought we better get started so we don't run out of time going into the concert. My name is Donald Huff. I'm the Kettering Praise Orchestra Director, and this whole project was something that I kind of dreamed up a few years ago, so I kind of just want to tell you about it. But to really get started, we need to kind of back up a little bit and get some history behind the original Pictures in an Exhibition. So this is Modest Mussorgsky. He was a Russian composer. He was part of what was called the Mighty Handful, or the Russian Five. And there were 5 Russian composers in the mid-19th century. And they got together and they really wanted to create an art that was uniquely Russian. And it wasn't only just composers, but also with artists or painters in the area. And so they were collaborating. So Modest Mussorgsky, he was one of the Russian 5. This is one of his painting friends, Viktor Hartman. And Victor's the one that his paintings are the ones that Pictures in an Exhibition is based upon. So they became friends, and Viktor actually gave Modest Mussorgsky a couple of his paintings, and he had those. And then at age 39, suddenly from an aneurysm, Viktor Hartman died. About 3 years after that, one of their mutual friends held an art exhibit in a memorial for Viktor Hartman, and they had a bunch of his paintings on display. So, again, Modest Mussorgsky goes to this exhibition, gets the idea to write a piece for piano based on these paintings. Turns out some of the paintings weren't even ones at the exhibit, some that he owned. But whatever the case, he wrote in a real short time a piece called Pictures in an Exhibition. It was 10 movements based on 11 paintings with 5 promenades, so 15 movements total. That is what Pictures Exhibition simply is, and that was in 1874. I'm a little skeptical on the bottom left one. I've heard that there's only 6 paintings still in existence, so that makes 7, so I'm not sure about that one, but these are the paintings that still exist today. So the unique thing about the work, this is called program music, basically. Like when in Bach's day, they just wrote music for music's sake. Well, in the 19th century, they started writing music that was called program music based on something specific, or it told a specific story, or it painted a specific picture. So the thing that he did that was unique through Pictures in an Exhibition, he included a promenade. And so it starts with the promenade, and today you'll get to hear the opening promenade, and that's supposed to represent Mussorgsky himself attending the exhibit. And the music is put into an irregular meter, so like the first measure is in 5/4, the next measure is in 6/4. So it's kind of like someone kind of just rambling around looking at paintings. And there's 5 of these promenades that depicts him going through the exhibit and contemplating the picture. So some are more contemplative than others, more like he's walking. So that's kind of the unique thing about Pictures in an Exhibition, the promenade. So here are the paintings that still exist. The Ballet of the Unhatched Chicks. These 2 are the 2 that Mussorgsky owned, that Viktor gave Mussorgsky. And they're actually titled The Poor Jew and The Rich Jew, and that's their names. And that was combined into one movement. So those 2 paintings make up one movement. You got Catacombs, The Hut on Hen's Legs, and probably the most famous, The Great Gate of Kiev. And The Great Gate of Kiev includes that opening promenade theme as part of the melodic structure of it, but it also includes some church hymn stuff from some Orthodox church music. This painting here actually was entered in a contest. They were having a contest to create a new entrance, and it's actually Kiev, I'm sorry. I just learned that from a Ukrainian last week, it's not Kiev, it's Kiev. And so he submitted this painting as in a contest to get picked for them to make the gate, and it's kind of Moorish in nature, and it's supposed to depict like a Russian military helmet. I think he won, but it was never built, so it was just a concept drawing. So that was in 1874. He wrote this. It didn't become that popular or famous until 1922, almost 50 years later, when Maurice Ravel, a French composer, orchestrated it for full orchestra. And Ravel's known as a really, really great orchestra, and how he took and the different songs and gave it to certain instruments and to certain textures and timbres really became popular because of Ravel's orchestration. I'll back up just a second. So I've been telling this story to different people when I would sit down and explain the project, and I was been showing my kids at school this and kind of explaining it to them, making a little bit of a music history project. And I asked myself, when did I first learn about pictures in an exhibition? Because one thing I've learned when I've sat down with many of you is that you weren't that familiar with Mussorgsky's Pictures in an Exhibition, which for me, I thought that was a more popular mainstream piece of classical music. So I was a little confused. I'm like, when did I first get exposed to that? I thought originally it was in college, but then I think I figured it out this week. When I graduated from high school, you know how you get money when you graduate, I had some cash, so I bought my first CD player, a little JBL stereo for my room going to college, and bought my first CDs. I bought like 5 or 6 CDs. I remember getting a Glenn Miller big band set. And then I think pretty soon after that, I joined a BMG music club. How many of you ever have joined one of those music clubs where you get like 10 free CDs when you join, and then you get one every month? I think that's probably when I said, oh, that's really sounding interesting. Pictures in an Exhibition, it was one of the classical music ones. So I ordered that CD, and I think that's probably when I first got it and became exposed to it. So it was a few years ago. This is Dr. Wesley Keim. Hopefully I have my dates right. I think he moved here to be part of the pathology department in 1976 and retired in 1995. And it was right at that year that he was retiring that he was really starting to pick up on his hobby of painting. So he I think he was doing classes down in Cincinnati, and he would come to church, and he would pick out someone, kind of sketch them, and then go home and paint them. That's essentially the story I got. And just today, I've learned a lot actually today from talking to people. Let's see if I can pull this up. Many of you know who Carol Clegg is. She commented yesterday, and I said, hey, tell me more. And this is how she would describe what a typical Sabbath might be. She goes, I would come into the fellowship hall where we are standing right now, and I would look for Dr. Keim. And she would try to set as close as she could to him so she could observe him sketching throughout the Sabbath school class. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So that gives you a little idea of how these paintings came to exist. And most of them, I think, were all painted in maybe that same year, that 1995, 96, real short time period. From what I kind of understand. So, and that's what Dr. Keim told me also. So, that happened, those paintings existed. I kind of knew of them because at the church here we've had a couple different times when art was displayed for an art Sabbath or something fun, and I had seen them, and I would go to Jerry's office, Jerry Taylor, and his was in his office. So I sat in his office many hours and saw that painting, so I was aware of them. But then, I think it was probably in 2018, Dr. Keim started posting on his Facebook page all of these paintings. And there were just many, many of them. And I thought, somehow that triggered, I'm like, oh, that'd be really cool to do something musical based on those. And then somehow, I don't even know when exactly it happened, it connected in my mind that we could do something like Pictures in an Exhibition, but based it on those paintings. So essentially, that's when it happened. And then in 2018, I emailed Dr. Keim and said, hey, this is my idea. What do you think? And I said, could you tell me what pictures there are? Because he had so many, and some of them were from just random subjects at his art class. Many, many of them were at Loma Linda, because in 2006, I think it was, he moved to Loma Linda, and he was commissioned to paint the administrators of Loma Linda University, and those paintings actually are in the hallways, from what I understand, at Loma Linda University today. So he had, I couldn't tell if some of them instantly I knew who they were, and others I didn't know if they were from Kettering, Loma Linda. So we started talking, and I started pulling them off of Facebook, and eventually we got to about 27 different paintings that we knew were uniquely from Kettering. And then I met with Dr. Bath and Kay Starkey and Bev Cobb and a handful of other people, and just figure out who they were, how did they connect to the community. And then I kind of started trying to get the niche of why they came, because most everyone in our community here, especially from that era, came here because Kettering Hospital was starting up. There's not too many people that, multiple generations of Adventists were from this area. Most of them came to Kettering, so that's kind of the little niche that why did you come? What brought you here? What role you played? So eventually I thought I narrowed it down for 10 or 11, but it ended up, it was 11 or 12 at the time, and I just decided, okay, let's do these. And then I started meeting with each family. I said, can I meet with you? I'd like to present a project. And so I'll tell them a little bit of history of the pictures in an exhibition, and then tell them what I would like to do, and is that okay? And if they told me okay, then I said, okay, can you fill out this sheet for me? On the sheet, I wanted to know a brief bio, general bio, and then I wanted to know what their favorite hymns were, what their favorite genre of music was, and what instruments they particularly liked. And then any other interesting facts that they could give me. I took all that information, compiled it, and that's what I sent to the composer to base what we're going to present today, Portraits at Kettering. So that's kind of how, in a nutshell, the whole thing came about. So that was in 2018 that I first emailed Dr. Keim, and we worked on it for a while. And then that spring, I took a group of students to Europe, so that kind of sucked up all my time. So the project just kind of got tabled for a while. In 2019, going to Europe, and quickly after that, I took another group to Disney World in the fall. So I was pretty busy, and then at the end of 2019, I started looking at it again, and then, COVID happened. So it kind of got shut down, and once things started zooming up about a year ago, I was like, okay, let's get this project done. So I approached a couple people, and I said, hey, would you be willing to be my lead donors and help me make this project happen? Because it wasn't going to be cheap. And I also, at that time, I had approached a composer to talk to him about, this is my idea, something you'd be interested in. So let's move on here. So this is Michael Brown. Michael Brown is a retired composer for the U.S. Army Band, Pershing's own in D.C. He spent 20 years composing and arranging for them. So usually the big bands, the Marine Band, the Army Band, the Navy Band, the main ones in D.C. area have their own personal composer-writer. And then, if you're in the military 20 years, boom, you're done. So he was doing that, and then he was also writing for the largest music publishing company called Hal Leonard. So it was one day, I had an idea. I wanted to do a Celtic song that featured green pea bones. And I had done a couple songs that were arranged by Michael Brown and band. I was like, this guy really writes well. I really like how he writes. Let me just out of the blue, I tried to find his name and contact him, and I did, and he agreed to write our first song for Praise Orchestra. And I think for 7 years in a row, he's written one for our Celtic concert every year. So he retired about 3 or 4 years ago, I think, and now full-time his job is just arranging for Hal Leonard and then for commissions like this. So that is who I approached and said, hey, would you be willing to do this? And he said yes, and we agreed kind of on a price, and I got a couple of lead gifts, and the project started up. That was, I think it was probably last spring is when we officially, boom, and then we found a date after of today, and we moved on. So I'll tell you a little bit about the piece now. So, Portraits at Kettering. Again, let's do this first. So this is my score for Pictures at an Exhibition. We're doing 3 movements from that today. So that's that. This is my score for Portraits at Kettering. So pretty good chunk of music, all right, for both of them. They're both 15 movements long. We have 11 different paintings that are based on movements and 4 promenades, where the original Pictures in an Exhibition has 10 paintings, or 11 paintings, 10 movements, and then 5 promenades. So they're very similar, and they're both about 35 minutes long. So I'm pretty excited how that turned out. Then both of them have promenades, and for our promenade in Portraits at Kettering, we chose the hymn, We Have This Hope, a uniquely Adventist hymn, and I think it kind of encapsulates that hope of heaven, the second coming, which is Adventist unique. And when you're looking at people that, some have died, and age gets us all pretty quick. As time goes quick, I think it's very appropriate. So that is what the 4 promenades are based on. And just like you'll hear in the Promenade from Pictures in an Exhibition, it starts with trumpet solo. So those are some similarities. So the first movement is entitled Self-Portrait. It's dedicated to Dr. Keim. And again, his favorite genre of music was string quartets and classical music, and his favorite hymn was In the Garden. Here's a portrait of his daughter Stephanie. So we'd hope that Stephanie could come here and play the violin solo. So this will feature a violin solo in kind of honor to his daughter Stephanie. Stephanie is she graduated, I think, the year before I started teaching at Spring Valley, and then she's been teaching at Loma Linda. Our paths kind of crossed there, but not exactly. So I don't know her well. So I'll give you a little snippet about my personal interaction with all of these people. And probably Dr. Keim is the person I know least of the bunch. I haven't really ever sat down face-to-face and talked to the man. We've emailed and so on. So that's Dr. Keim. But again, he's the key component. I would say, first of all, Mussorgsky, without Pictures in an Exhibition, this project wouldn't exist. And then without Dr. Keim's paintings, this project wouldn't exist. Number two, we chose to call this one the founder, Ernie Neufeld. This one is based on two songs, Homesick for Heaven and When We All Get to Heaven. And it's kind of, the first one is kind of done in a style of Ricky Skaggs, kind of a folk gospel tune, and it's going to feature harmonica. I didn't know Ernie well, but I still can picture him exactly where he sat in church. It's amazing how many people you'll sit down and talk to them and they're like, well, yeah, they always sit, it's based on where you sit, in church at Kettering here. So I remember where he sat, and he's always had a smile and a good disposition. And I spent many years working with his daughter, Kathy, at Spring Valley, and view her as a great friend, and I appreciate her support through this project. She's always been excited about it every time I talk to her, so I appreciate that. Dr. Small. Surgeon. Where's Dr. Small? Dr. Small's with us today. He was maybe the second family that we were basing a portrait in that I went and sat down by, and he was so valuable in all the information he could share about the different people and different ideas, and it really helped shape a few questions I wasn't quite sure which direction to go. He really helped solidify that in my mind by talking to him. And also when I talked to other people and presented the pictures that we're going to use, kind words from everyone for Dr. Small. They just have such respect for him. His movement will be based on the hymn, What a Friend We Have in Jesus, and it's kind of a dedication to his wife for her piano playing, so it'll feature solo piano. Promenade number 2, I think on the original Pictures in an Exhibition, starts with French horn solo, and our version starts with euphonium solo. Similar to the first Promenade, just slightly different. Again, all the promenades are based on We Have This Hope. Number 4, Hospital President. This is dedicated to Bob Willett, who's here with us today. Yeah. It's been nice getting to know his daughter-in-law, Terry, as we've worked on this project. Bob, when you meet Bob for the first time, he leaves an impression, I feel like, because I remember having band concerts, Spring Valley concerts, and Bob would come up to me and shake my hand and give me some encouraging words, and it really I knew who he was instantly. Painted a picture in my mind. So, and his favorite instrument is the organ, and he loves Jerry playing the Vidor staccato. That was his biggest thing. So his movement is going to be based on A Mighty Fortress Is Our God, which is one of his favorite hymns, and it's going to be kind of in a fugue Baroque style. So Dr. Glenn Bilsma, pathologist. So make sure I get this right. We got his 3 daughters, right? Barbie, Bev, and Trixie, all here. I didn't know Glenn very well. I remember when me and my wife, we were moving from here to California. I remember that their going away party was at the Bilsma's house. So I remember that, and I appreciate that. But again, when I've gone to different families and shared the photos, he's one that everybody just has just thinking about him makes them smile. So this is probably one of the more fun ones in the sense that you'll have to read all the bios eventually in the program, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But his favorite instrument was the Hawaiian lap steel string guitar. So when you hear one of those, it has a very unique sound. So I was like, cool, that's going to be really neat. So then we started trying to figure out where to get an instrument like that to use. And we kind of had picked one online and wasn't sure if it was available, so I went to Guitar Center and I bought it. They thought they had some in stock. Well, it turns out they didn't, and with how supplies are right now, it kind of got crazy. And then at the same time, they tracked down one of his guitars. And it was in California at the time, and so we had it shipped to Steve Martin in Chicago, and he restrung it, and that's what you're going to get. You're going to get to actually hear Glenn's guitar being played on his song. And his song, let's see if I can add all these. His song is based on the Old Rugged Cross and Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. Yeah, so that'll be a nice one. Not that they all won't be. Peter Bath, pastor. So when I came to Ohio, Dr. Bath was at Kettering College at that time, so I wasn't here when he was the pastor, but my very first performance for the high school band was at Centerville Church, and he spoke that Sabbath. It was kind of a unique Sabbath. He spoke, and Sam Pomalis was dedicated that Sabbath when I look back, so it's kind of ironic. That was my first performance at a church. So I had the privilege of teaching all three of their daughters at Spring Valley. Some really great memories, and Peter used to host our summer band concerts at the beginning of the school out on the front lawn at Spring Valley. Some good times, and he's always been so supportive. And he also plays the bagpipes, which is really cool, because I love Celtic music, as you know, and I love the bagpipes. So this is probably my favorite one, just because it features bagpipes, and it's Celtic, and it's based on the hymn, Fairest Lord Jesus. My goal today was hopefully to have Michael Brown, the composer, here, and we kind of do an interview type thing, but I couldn't get him to come. But I did email him a list of questions last night, and he gave me some good answers. So speaking of Peter's song, let's see here. So I asked him, what was the most challenging part of the whole process of writing Portraits at Kettering? And he said this was his answer. He says, the most challenging part of the process was writing for dulcimer and bagpipes with band. He said, bagpipes don't have the exact same Western tuning as the orchestra. It was a challenge finding a hymn that was actually playable on bagpipes, since it has a very limited range. Fortunately, Fairest Lord Jesus was one of Peter Bath's favorite hymns, and I was able to make it work with band with only one small modal alteration, which was a lowered seventh scale degree instead of the normal leading tone. And then he says, this was my first time writing for dulcimer. But Steve Martin offered valuable advice and suggestions. And we'll talk about the dulcimer song in a little bit. So, again, Fairest Lord Jesus with bagpipes, Pastor Bath. It's going to be a good one. Promenade number 3 is brass only. So it's not, they take the hymn, we have this hope, and he does a kind of a unique setting. I think it's great. I love this one. Brass only. Number 7, Al Brindle, Chaplain. So his is going to be a clarinet solo on I'd Rather Have Jesus. Now, I know Al Brindle really is the grandfather of Janelle and Jeremy and Jonathan Cobb, because when I came, those were my students, and lots of great times with all three of them in band, and I won't steal all Jonathan's thunder because he's going to do the welcome tonight. And so it's so exciting that Jonathan and Katie got to come back and to Ohio to begin with, but then to be here this weekend is extra special. So I just remember your grandparents, bringing you to, whether it be to play softball or to, come to your music lessons or what. So that's how, and I remember going to the Cobbs for Sabbath lunch and just being around Al was, he had a certain exuberance about him. And I remember one time after a concert, he came up to me and goes, he's always very complimentary, but he's like, we really need to have a song where we can at least sing once. And because he just felt like, and when I was talking to Bev just a couple of weeks ago, he was really big on, when he was a pastor, getting his congregations to learn new hymns. And so he was always promoting that. So for a long time, I always included a vocal in my concerts based on what he told me. I was going to say one more thing about So he started the chaplaincy program at Kettering, and so we decided to label his portrait movement as chaplain. So Winton Bevan. When I started teaching, I got put on a curriculum committee. I haven't been on one since those first 2 years teaching, and I don't ever want to be on another curriculum committee. People that want to focus on curriculum, I don't understand. Just let me teach band, okay? That's all I want to do. But Winton Bevan was the chair of that committee, and instantly, when you sit down at a table with him, you knew that he was a wise man and had just when he talked, like, wow, he's smart. That's just the impression I got. So I did not know him really well, but I did get the chance to spend some time on a curriculum committee with him. In this process, I learned that he really liked jazz music, especially big band music. So I was like, that's going to be great because who doesn't like big band music? So today we have it's a saxophone duet between alto and tenor sax based on Praise to the Lord the Almighty, and it's in a 3/4 jazz waltz style, with a Baroque fugue in the middle. So a very unique one, and the composer actually sent that one to us first. He's like, there's two that are going to be a little harder, and this is one of them. So we've played that one a lot because we got one or two songs, I don't know, early September, and then we had a date that I really wanted them all, and he was set to give them to me, and because we had practice on Wednesday night, and on Monday his computer died. He saved the files, but he had the whole next Tuesday he spent just getting a new computer, and then when he got a new version of his software, it didn't work for a while. You know how that all goes. So, and then the next Wednesday, I didn't have praise orchestra rehearsal, so it was really 2 more weeks before we started that. So I only had the one, which was his, but you'll like that one a lot. Priscilla Saxauer. Where's Priscilla? She's here. Yeah, there she is. So when I started teaching at Spring Valley, I taught K-5 music and band. And I won't forget that when Mrs. Saxauer brought her first graders down to my room to teach, I was like, they were very lined up, real straight, real proper, and I could tell she was like, do I really trust this guy with my students? So I could just get that sense. And so I always respected how she was magic with those kids. So I had the privilege of teaching quite a few years with this Mrs. Saxauer, and then she retired in the year 2000, right? Is that right? In the year 2000, and we figured, me and Vicki Swetnam, I got the files on. It was 31 years that, according to the file, that she taught at Spring Valley Academy. So the year she retired, there was a family that supported Spring Valley Academy actually commissioning her painting to be painted and left at Spring Valley Academy. So that was, the rest of these paintings are pretty much from the 1995 era. Hers was from 2000. So if you're into art, maybe you can look at them and see the difference. I don't know. But that's kind of the history of her painting. And when I sat down with her, she liked lots of different styles of music, but particularly kind of a folk music, and we're going to feature the instrument, the mountain dulcimer. So again, our composer was like, that was pretty tricky to figure out how to write for that, because again, that's kind of in a unique key. I think it's on an Aeolian scale is how it's kind of set up. And her hymn is based on the beloved How Great Thou Art. So, and then we have the last promenade, which is woodwinds only, except for the very end, the conical brass come in. So conical brass are French horns, euphoniums, tubas, and if we had cornets, they'd be cornets. And what conical brass is, from the lead pipe where the mouthpiece goes in, as it gets bigger and bigger, as it gets longer and longer, it just gradually gets bigger. So it gives it a more mellow sound. That's conical brass. Where if it's spherical brass, it's like trumpets and trombones, except for the bell, their piping is straight the whole way. So when you play those project stronger and less mellow. So again, Promenade 4, woodwinds only, with just a little bit of conical brass at the end. Movement 10, youth pastor, Joe Womack. So this one is kind of an interesting one in the sense that from what just watching on Facebook, when Wesley posted his picture, I think Joe or someone said, I never knew that picture existed. Do I have that right, Pastor Joe? Yeah, he didn't know that he was painted until he saw it. Yeah, say hi to Pastor Joe. Yeah, thanks for being here. So he didn't know until Wesley was just a couple years ago posting those on Facebook that he had been painted. So we have no idea where that. I tried to see if that painting existed somewhere, and we can't track it down anywhere. So he said, read his bio, some great, got a little sound bite in there from him, some good stuff. And the hymn we chose was, A Quiet Place. And so the composer was like, can you give me a little bit more on that? And he says, what do you think about the Take 6 version? And then I asked Joe, give me a good version. He said, well, how about the Take 6 one? So they were already on the same page. I kind of wanted to go a little different direction because he said he liked the Beatles, like that was his favorite group. So I kind of imagined a little more Beatles-like, but instead you'll hear a Take 6 version featuring electric guitar and wind ensemble. Pastor Joe is a big classic rock guy, so let's see here. I think I have a picture. Yeah, so when I talked to Pastor Joe, I said, hey, this is the project. You ever heard of Pictures in an Exhibition? You remember I said most people had it? He knew right of it. He goes, yeah. Emerson, Lake, and Palmer, they did a classic rock on that. And sure enough, there's a bunch of all kind of different genres of musical groups have covered Pictures in an Exhibition. So he knew that from the rock world. So he knew right about it. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. So I think you'll enjoy that one. And the final one, because it's kind of the biggest one, we put it at the end, and that's Jerry Taylor. And I could spend 2 hours telling you about stories about Jerry Taylor. When I came to interview I did some meetings at school, and then he picked me up and drove me downtown to Westminster and to Kettering, and then we stopped by and saw Martha Jean at Southminster at the time, and he was asking me crazy questions like stuff like made me pretty uncomfortable. Like, how do I answer that? So he put me on, he was testing me. So I'll say also about Jerry is there's not a week that I come in here that I don't think about him, because there's so much that he did behind the scenes and in front of the scenes too that impacted everyone else at the church. He was here all the time and just made sure everything, and I just appreciate so much the stuff that he did that no one else is going to do ever. And so I miss that a lot, and I look back and appreciate it. And he hugely shaped the musician I am and the leader I am and the director I am just by working with him for like 30 years. So Jerry Taylor, you guys know that, organ was his thing, and the Vito Toccata, what he's really known for. But he actually always talked to me about wanting to do an arrangement of Holy, Holy, Holy in a certain way. So we chose Vito's Toccata, and the composer combined Holy, Holy, Holy with it. It's pretty subtle, though. So normally we have a bass line, the pedal line, and the organ. You'll hear the brass playing that, but it'll be the hymn, Holy, 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 at a pretty slow pace underneath the Vito Toccata. And the Vito Toccata is not quite this full version, it's a little bit shorter, but that's essentially how we end the program. So that is, in a nutshell, Portraits at Kettering. So I told you I emailed Michael Brown and asked him a few questions. So I said, how long have you worked on the project, or how long did it take you to compose? And he goes from pre-planning through the various stages of writing the music, extracting and editing over 400 parts, to creating mock-up recordings to suggested program notes. It took over 2 months. He says, this is my day job, so I was working only on this project, no teaching or performing or other duties. So about 2 months from start to finish, it took us to do this project whenever he started on it. And like he said, over 400 parts. So again, Portraits of Kettering has 15 movements, and each movement has 20-some parts. And I had to print each file out over twice. So that means I printed like over 800 different files. So I spent a lot of time in the copy room working on this. So that gives you an idea of the scope of the project. And I told you already what the most challenging part was. I said, what was the most exciting part of the project? He goes, the most exciting part of the project was writing for such a wide variety of solo instruments in combination with the band. Also, it was fun and exciting to write praise to the Lord the Almighty in a jazz style with a Baroque fugue in the middle to boot. I said, why did you agree to the project, or what made you want to take this project on? He said, I wanted to do this project because I've enjoyed writing for Meister Huff and the Praise Orchestra since late 2014. Also, I retired from my job as music arranger for the U.S. Army bands in 2018, so now I had the time to take on a much larger scale project. I'd like to take just a note too, and also Steve Martin will be here playing a lot of these unique instruments. He's a fellow band director from Chicago who's come down to many of our Celtic concerts. Extraordinary player, and I was like, ask him how hard it is like to transfer what you do on banjo to guitar to mountain dulcimer to Hawaiian lap string. He says, really, they're all different instruments, so he kind of just switches gears and knows that this one works like that, even though some of it carries over. He's also playing harmonica and concertina and all kinds of stuff today. So to make this project work, it's so nice to have someone like that that can play multiple instruments and do them really well. I said, to the composer, where did you get inspiration or ideas from? And he says, my inspiration came from the combination of two things. First, the portraits and bios of the 11 church members who were the subjects of the paintings. And second, I was obviously impressed musically by Ravel's orchestration of Mussorgsky's pictures in exhibition. I've known this piece since I was in middle school. As a trumpet player, I loved hearing Adolf Herseth play the opening solo with the Chicago Symphony. I aspired to sound like him. So he already had a good impression about this piece going in. Let's see. Is there anything interesting you learned about the original Pictures in an Exhibition throughout the project? He says, yes, I learned that Pictures in an Exhibition has also been arranged and orchestrated by many people over the years. Also, it has been arranged for chamber orchestra, brass ensemble, solo, classical guitar, and other configurations. And it has inspired versions in many divergent styles: progressive rock, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, electronic music by Iso Tomita, heavy metal by Mekong Delta, just to name a few. I said, what's your next big project? He says, I don't have any project of this magnitude on my plate at the time. I'm currently composing a commission for the Peachtree Symphonic Winds in Atlanta, Georgia. This is in addition to my ongoing writing assignments for Hal Leonard Corporation, the world's largest print music publisher. So those are a few words from the composer. Let's see. Again, I talked already a little bit about the similarities between the two pieces. Both are 15 movements. Both are roughly 35 minutes in length. They're both based on 11 paintings. And currently, both projects have many missing paintings. When I wrote these notes a day or two ago, if you have a program, you'll see the paintings on the cover. I thought that there were 6 that we knew where they were. Turns out there's only 4 currently where we knew. I thought the Cobbs and the Bass probably had theirs, but they didn't. So that kind of surprised me. So that's another similarity, that not all the paintings, or at least we don't know where all the paintings are of either work today. I'll say this again in there, but just the plan is this. When we get to Portraits at Kettering, we will play the movement. For instance, we'll play Self-Portrait for Wesley Keim. It'll feature Karina Beebe on violin. We'll recognize her at the end. She'll take a bow, and then any family or close friends of the portrait, if you would be willing to just stand and be recognized. And then we'll go to the next one. I won't be talking during portraits, but we would like to take time give you a chance to applaud between movements and also recognize each family represented by the portrait. Does that make sense? All right. I think I covered what I was hoping to cover. I've got 5 minutes before I need to be my next spot. Any questions that I could answer?
What's an appropriate website to search so that we understand some of the terms that you use?
That's good. I sounded at least a little bit intelligent, right? With a few of my terms.
The one with the Baroque fugue, whatever that is.
Just Google the word and it'll tell you. You don't have to go to a website. We have a word in our score that says loco, and we can't even figure out what loco exactly means as a musical term. Maybe Martha Jean knows what loco stands for. as written. Okay, all right. It's not on my score, but it's in one of the other parts, which was weird too. All right, other questions? Yes? How did I choose the composer? We were doing what was the concert? I had a small group. It was right when I went back to Spring Valley, and we were doing one of the songs by Tijuana Taxi. And Michael Brown wrote it, and it sounded good, but it was easy too. And so I said, when I wanted to do the thing with P-Bones, I was like, I think this composer can do it well. And so that's out of the blue. I just picked him based on a few of his songs that I had done, because I liked how his arrangements, they're very playable. They just, you get them and they just play. And he's always like, I hope that's not too hard. And it's never too hard, because he's a really good writer. So that's how I chose him. And we've, honestly, he's given me a pretty good price every time he writes a piece compared to other composers. And we just have a good thing going. And we never talk on the phone. We just talk via email, and we work really well together. So I felt very comfortable turning the project over to him. All right. Well, thank you for coming to the pre-concert lecture. And we hope you enjoyed the concert.